The afternoon sun was hot, making the sidewalks shine. Marcus was riding his new bicycle with a wide smile on his face. It was his birthday gift. Bright red with shiny black wheels. He loved the feeling of the wind brushing against his face as he pedaled down the quiet, neat streets. This was his neighborhood too. He lived just 2 streets away. But inside one of the houses, behind a large window, Mrs. Peterson watched him closely. Her lips tightened into a thin line. "Who is that kid?" she muttered to herself. "Why is he here?" Without thinking twice, she picked up her phone and called the police. "Hello, yes, there's a suspicious black boy riding a bike around my street. I think he might be stealing or checking houses." The words came out quickly, filled with fear that had no real reason. She hung up the phone, feeling proud. Keeping the neighborhood safe, she thought. The arrival. Within minutes, sirens screamed through the peaceful streets. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. Children playing in their yards stopped and stared. 2 police cars rolled up fast, tires screeching. Officers jumped out, hands on their belts, eyes sharp. Marcus froze in the middle of the street, confused. He didn't understand why the police were here. He hadn't done anything wrong. "Hey, you," one officer barked. "Get off the bike. Hands where we can see them." Marcus's heart raced. His small hands shook as he got off the bike and raised them high. "I live here," he said quickly, his voice trembling. "I didn't do anything." But the officers didn't listen. One officer grabbed Marcus roughly by the arm. The other started checking his pockets, looking for something that wasn't there. Mrs. Peterson watched proudly from her porch. She crossed her arms and nodded to herself. "Doing the right thing," she thought again. "No one listens." "Please, sir," Marcus tried again. "My house is just around the corner. My mom's at work. I'm just riding my birthday bike." But the officers kept asking questions. "Where did you get this bike? Are you sure it's yours? Who are you here to see?" Marcus's eyes filled with tears. He couldn't believe what was happening. Slowly, neighbors started gathering around. Some whispered to each other. Others pulled out their phones and began recording. A few people looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Others shook their heads, believing Mrs. Peterson's story without question. No one stepped forward to help the scared boy. Growing tension. Mrs. Peterson finally walked closer, a satisfied look on her face. "I told you," she said to the officers. "He was acting suspicious. I've never seen him before." Marcus turned to her, his voice cracking. "Ma'am, I live near here. I'm not a stranger." Mrs. Peterson scoffed. "Well, I've lived here for 20 years, and I know who belongs and who doesn't." The officers tightened their grip on Marcus's arms. One officer spoke into his radio, asking for backup. It was getting serious. Too serious for a child who had only been riding his bike. Silent witnesses. More and more people gathered. Some shook their heads in disapproval. Some whispered about how things weren't safe anymore. One older woman, Mrs. Evans, frowned deeply. She knew Marcus. She had seen him ride his bike before. But she hesitated. She was afraid to speak against the police. "Maybe I'm wrong," she thought sadly. In the crowd, phones kept recording. The scene was ugly. A happy birthday moment turned into a nightmare. Marcus stood quietly, tears running down his cheeks. He didn't understand. Why didn't they believe him? Why didn't anyone help him? The calm before the storm. Just as things seemed to get worse, a black SUV appeared at the end of the street, moving quickly and smoothly. No one noticed at first. The police officers were too busy questioning Marcus. Mrs. Peterson was too busy feeling proud. But the SUV stopped right next to the crowd. The door opened. Out stepped a tall woman in a sharp suit, her face calm, but her eyes burning with controlled fire. It was Marcus's mother. But she wasn't just any mother. She was Governor Elaine Johnson, the most powerful woman in the state. And she had just seen everything. Governor Elaine Johnson stepped out of the black SUV. She wore a dark blue suit, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Her face was calm, but her eyes were cold and serious. People around the scene turned to look. They didn't know who she was yet, but something about her presence made them nervous. She walked straight toward the police officers without hesitation. Marcus saw her and called out in a broken voice, "Mom." Elaine's heart tightened, but she didn't let her emotions show. This was not the time for tears. She stood tall in front of the officers. "What's happening here?" she asked, her voice clear and firm. The officers blinked in surprise. They weren't used to being questioned like this. One officer, Officer Reed, stepped forward, trying to stay in control. "Ma'am, this boy was acting suspicious. A resident called it in." "We're just doing our job," he said, trying to sound professional. Elaine didn't blink. And what exactly was suspicious about riding a bicycle on a sunny afternoon? The crowd grew silent. Some people looked at the ground. Others exchanged nervous glances. Mrs. Peterson stepped forward quickly, thinking she could explain. "He was looking around too much," she said loudly. "He didn't belong here. I was protecting the neighborhood." Elaine turned slowly to look at her. Her gaze was sharp, slicing through Mrs. Peterson's confidence. "Protecting it from a child?" she asked quietly. Mrs. Peterson faltered. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The truth unfolds. Elaine crouched down and gently took Marcus's hands in hers. She could see he was shaking. Tears were still fresh on his cheeks. "Did you show them your address?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded quickly. "I told them, but they didn't believe me," he whispered. Elaine stood up again, taller, stronger. She faced the officers. "You are detaining a 12-year-old boy without any proof of wrongdoing," she said sharply. "You have no right to treat him like a criminal, especially when his only crime was existing in a place you think he doesn't belong." Officer Reed shifted uncomfortably. The other officers looked at each other, realizing things were slipping out of their control. Shockwaves. Just then, a reporter from the local news, who lived nearby, pushed through the crowd. "Governor Johnson," he gasped, recognizing her at last. Whispers spread fast. "Governor, that's Marcus's mother." "Oh no." Mrs. Peterson's face turned pale. Her pride quickly turned into fear. She had called the police on the governor's son, and now the entire neighborhood was watching. Elaine ignored the growing attention. She focused only on her son and the injustice. "Release my son now," she said firmly. The officers hesitated, but they knew they had no choice. Slowly, they let go of Marcus. He stumbled into his mother's arms. Elaine hugged him tightly, running her hand gently over his hair. "It's okay, baby. I'm here now," she whispered. No more silence. Elaine turned back to face the crowd. Her voice was steady, but filled with deep emotion. "This is what happens when people judge others by the color of their skin," she said loudly. "This is what happens when fear and ignorance are allowed to rule." Mrs. Peterson looked like she wanted to disappear. Elaine continued, "My son did nothing wrong. He deserved the same respect, the same safety, as any other child playing in his own neighborhood." Cameras were now rolling. Phones were recording every word. The whole world was about to see what happened here. The beginning of change. Elaine looked straight at the police officers. "I expect a full report on this incident by tomorrow," she said sharply. "I also expect accountability." Then she looked at Mrs. Peterson. "And I hope today teaches you something important," she said. "Judging someone without knowing them can ruin lives. It nearly ruined my son's birthday." Elaine picked up Marcus's bicycle and held his hand tightly. Together, they walked back to the black SUV. The crowd stayed silent, watching them leave. No one cheered. No one clapped. They were too busy feeling the heavy weight of guilt and realization. A mother's promise. As they drove away, Marcus leaned against his mother, exhausted. "Why did she do that, Mom?" he asked softly. "I didn't do anything wrong." Elaine kissed the top of his head. "Because some people are afraid of what they don't understand," she said. "But I promise you, my son, we will make this world better. Not just for you, but for every child who feels out of place because of how they look." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling safe in her words. The road ahead was long, but they would walk it together. And this time, they would not be silent. Governor Elaine Johnson knew this was not the time to walk away quietly. The mistake was made in front of the whole neighborhood. The pain her son felt could not be ignored. And now, it was time for answers. Elaine turned around slowly. Her eyes swept over the crowd that had gathered. Everyone stood frozen, unsure of what would happen next. She faced the officers again. Officer Reeve and his partner looked nervous. They avoided meeting her eyes. Elaine took a deep breath and spoke, her voice calm but strong. "I need badge numbers. Now." The officers hesitated. They knew they were wrong, but they hoped it would be forgotten. "Not today." "Ma'am, we were just following a report from a concerned citizen." Officer Reed tried again. Elaine raised her hand to stop him. "I didn't ask for excuses. I asked for badge numbers," she said firmly. Slowly, the officers called out their badge numbers. Elaine took out her phone and recorded them herself. The crowd watched silently, turning to the accuser. Then, Elaine turned to Mrs. Peterson. The older woman stood stiffly, her face red with embarrassment and anger. "And you," Elaine said, her voice slicing through the heavy air. "Tell me exactly what made my son suspicious to you." Mrs. Peterson swallowed hard. Her hands twisted nervously in front of her. She tried to speak, but no words came. Elaine waited. The crowd waited. Finally, Mrs. Peterson managed to say, He was looking around too much, and I didn't recognize him." Elaine stepped closer. "Looking around too much," she repeated slowly. "In a neighborhood where he lives, riding a birthday gift from his own mother." Mrs. Peterson opened her mouth to argue, but she knew she had no real answer. Elaine's voice grew stronger. "You saw a black boy and decided he didn't belong. You saw his skin color, and fear filled your mind. You didn't ask questions. You didn't care about the truth. You called for punishment without reason." The words hit harder than any shout could have. Mrs. Peterson's face crumpled. She looked down at her feet, unable to meet Elaine's eyes. The crowd awakens. Whispers spread through the crowd. People who had watched silently now shifted uncomfortably. Some realized they had also judged too quickly. Some wished they had spoken up when they saw Marcus in trouble. An old man in the crowd, Mr. Harris, spoke up loudly. "I've seen that boy before," he said, pointing at Marcus. "He rides by every morning on his way to school. He's always polite." Another woman, Mrs. Evans, added, "I should have said something earlier. I knew he lived nearby." Voices of guilt and regret started to rise. Elaine looked at them, but didn't smile. This wasn't about making them feel better. This was about making them see the truth. A powerful message. Elaine took a few steps back and addressed everyone. "This isn't just about my son," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "This is about every child who feels fear instead of freedom. Every parent who worries more about the color of their child's skin than the kindness in their heart." She paused, letting her words sink in. It's about a system that teaches people to see danger where there is only innocence. Today, you judged wrong, and you hurt a boy who deserved nothing but joy. Tears filled Marcus's eyes again, but this time, they were different. He saw the strength in his mother. He saw the power of truth. Mrs. Peterson's apology. Mrs. Peterson stepped forward slowly. Her voice shook as she spoke. I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing." Elaine looked at her for a long moment. "Sometimes good intentions cause great harm," she said. "Next time, try understanding before accusing. Try kindness before fear." Mrs. Peterson nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. The crowd stayed silent. heavy with the lesson they were learning. A promise for justice. Elaine faced the officers one last time. "There will be a full investigation," she said firmly. "Not just into today's actions, but into how our police handle calls based on race and bias." The officers nodded quickly. They knew this was bigger than just today. Elaine took Marcus's hand once again. Together, they started walking back toward their car. Marcus held his head a little higher. The people around moved out of their way with quiet respect. Today, Marcus had learned something painful, but he also learned something powerful. He saw that one voice, strong and steady, could make a whole world listen. The news of the incident spread fast. By evening, local reporters and TV channels were outside Marcus's house. People wanted answers. They wanted to know what had really happened. Elaine sat with Marcus on their front porch. She gently held his hand, letting him decide if he wanted to speak. Marcus looked at the crowd gathered on the street. He was nervous, but he also knew he had to be brave. He nodded to his mother. Elaine stood up and spoke first. "Before we answer questions," she said calmly, "my son, Marcus, would like to say something." The cameras turned toward the small boy. Marcus took a deep breath. His voice was soft but clear. Marcus's story. "I'm 12 years old," Marcus began. "Today was supposed to be my birthday party. My mom gave me a new bike this morning. I was so happy." He paused, swallowing hard. "I wanted to ride it around the neighborhood. I thought maybe some of my friends would see me and join." The crowd listened silently. "I wasn't doing anything wrong," Marcus continued. "I was just riding, smiling, feeling free." Tears welled up in his eyes. "But when I passed Mrs. Peterson's house, she stared at me like I was dangerous. I felt scared. Then the police came. They shouted at me. They grabbed me. They didn't listen when I told them my name, my address." His voice shook. "I thought I was going to jail on my birthday." The crowd gasped softly. Even some police officers standing nearby looked down, ashamed. The pain of assumptions. Elaine put a hand on Marcus's shoulder, giving him strength. Marcus wiped his eyes and went on. "I don't want other kids to feel like I did today," he said. "Just because I have brown skin doesn't mean I'm bad." There was a long silence, a silence heavy with shame, regret, and reflection. Mrs. Peterson, standing in the crowd, wiped her eyes with a tissue. The entire neighborhood now saw the full picture, not their assumptions, but the truth. Marcus wasn't a threat. He was just a boy with a dream of riding his bike. Elaine speaks. Elaine stepped forward again. "Today wasn't about one woman making a mistake," she said, her voice steady. "It was about a system that lets fear grow in the hearts of good people. It was about how easily a child's innocence can be stolen because of old, ugly ideas." She looked around at all the familiar faces, her neighbors, her community. "We cannot pretend this didn't happen. We cannot hide behind excuses." Elaine paused, letting her words settle deep into their hearts. "We must change, not tomorrow, not someday, now." A small beginning. After the speeches, some neighbors stepped forward. Mr. Harris, the old man who had spoken earlier, came up to Marcus. He knelt down to Marcus's level. "Son, I'm sorry we didn't protect you," he said softly. "You deserve better." Marcus nodded shyly. Others came too. Mrs. Evans, Mr. Roberts, even teenagers from nearby houses. They apologized. They promised to be better. Mrs. Peterson came last. Her face was tired and red from crying. She bent down and said in a broken voice, "I judged you unfairly. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I hope one day you can forgive me." Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. Then he whispered, "I'll try." And somehow, that small, brave answer meant more than anything. Building new bridges. The governor's team set up a community meeting for the following weekend. Everyone was invited. The topic: understanding, not judging. Elaine announced that police officers would also attend. They would listen to stories from Black families and children. They would hear their pain, their fears, and their dreams. Change starts with understanding each other, Elaine said. Marcus looked up at his mother, pride shining in his eyes. He knew it would not erase what happened today, but it could make sure fewer children ever felt what he felt. And that made him smile, just a little. A stronger tomorrow. That night, after the reporters left and the neighbors went home, Elaine tucked Marcus into bed. She kissed his forehead gently. "You were so brave today," she said. Marcus smiled sleepily. "You too, Mom," he whispered. Elaine turned off the light and sat quietly beside him for a long time, thinking. They had faced the storm. They had told their truth. And tomorrow, they would keep fighting, together. The next morning, Elaine woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. Messages, missed calls, emails, all pouring in faster than she could read. News of what had happened to Marcus had traveled far beyond their neighborhood. It had spread across the entire country. TV channels were replaying videos taken by neighbors. Social media was flooded with posts about Marcus's story. Hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus and #LetKidsBeKids were trending everywhere. Elaine sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee untouched in front of her. Marcus sat across from her, wide-eyed, holding his phone too. "Mom, look," he said excitedly. "People are talking about me. They're saying it wasn't fair." Elaine smiled gently, but also felt a heavy responsibility. The world was watching now. The world reacts. Celebrities started posting about Marcus. Famous athletes, singers, and actors shared his story. One post from a famous basketball player read, "Marcus, you are strong. We see you. We stand with you." Another singer tweeted, "A boy should be riding his bike, not fighting for his right to exist peacefully. Shame on those who judged him." Even international news outlets picked up the story. Reporters camped outside Elaine's house, hoping for interviews. The small, quiet neighborhood suddenly became a center of national conversation. Invitations and opportunities. By afternoon, Elaine received a call from a big TV network. They wanted her and Marcus to appear on a live show to talk about what happened. Elaine was unsure. She didn't like the idea of Marcus being pushed into the spotlight too much. But Marcus surprised her. "I want to tell them, Mom," he said seriously. "I want to tell kids like me that it's okay to speak up." Elaine saw the determination in his eyes. He wasn't scared anymore. He wanted to be a voice for change. The TV interview. The next day, they went to the TV studio. The lights were bright. The cameras pointed straight at them. The host smiled warmly and welcomed them to the show. Marcus sat tall in his chair. When asked about the day he was stopped, Marcus answered clearly. "I didn't do anything wrong," he said. "But I was treated like I did, just because of how I look." The host nodded, encouraging him. "What would you like to say to kids who are watching you right now?" she asked. Marcus thought for a moment. "Don't be afraid to be yourself," he said. "Even if people treat you unfairly, know that you are good enough. Speak up. Someone will hear you." The audience clapped softly. Elaine wiped away a proud tear. Different reactions. While many people praised Marcus and Elaine, not everyone was supportive. Some people online wrote hurtful comments. They said Mrs. Peterson was just trying to protect the neighborhood. They blamed Elaine for making it a big deal. Elaine didn't respond to the hate. She knew change never came easily. "When you shine a light on darkness," she told Marcus, "some people will cover their eyes, but others will open them wide." Marcus nodded, understanding more than most kids his age. Support from unexpected places. One afternoon, as Elaine and Marcus returned home from the grocery store, they found a small group waiting outside their house. It was Mrs. Peterson and some of the other neighbors. They weren't holding signs of protest. They were holding signs of apology. One large sign read, "We are sorry, Marcus. We see you now." Mrs. Peterson stepped forward. She carried a tray of homemade cookies, her hands shaking slightly. "I know cookies can't fix everything," she said, voice trembling. "But maybe they can be a first step." Marcus looked at his mom. Elaine gave him a small nod. Marcus took one cookie, broke it in half, and handed the other half back to Mrs. Peterson. The small gesture brought tears to many eyes. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the past. But it was a beginning. A new start. Over the next few weeks, the neighborhood changed. Elaine helped organize community talks about racism, bias, and kindness. People who had never spoken to each other before now sat together, sharing stories, listening, learning. Marcus became a little hero, not because he wanted fame, but because he showed courage when it mattered most. He still rode his bike, just like before. But now, every time he rode down the street, people waved. Some shouted, "Hey Marcus, great job." He smiled, feeling a new kind of freedom. Not the freedom of just riding fast, but the freedom of being seen, truly seen, for who he really was. After their story went viral, Marcus and Elaine realized something powerful. This was bigger than just one neighborhood. This was a chance to create real change, not just for Marcus, but for every child who had ever been judged unfairly. Elaine sat down with Marcus one evening at the kitchen table. The sky outside was painted with orange and pink. It was peaceful, but Elaine knew there was more work to be done. "Marcus," she said, "what happened to you should never happen to another child. What if we build something? Something that can make a difference?" Marcus's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Like what, Mom?" he asked. Elaine smiled. "A foundation. The place where kids like you can learn about their rights, where neighbors can learn how to stand together instead of judging each other." Marcus thought for a moment. Then he nodded with excitement. "Let's do it," he said. And so, the Marcus Foundation for Justice was born. First steps. Starting was not easy. They had no money for fancy offices or big events, but they had something stronger: community support. Neighbors who once stood silent now volunteered. Teachers, church leaders, even local business owners wanted to help. Elaine organized the first meeting at the local community center. The place was packed. There were kids, parents, grandparents, all eager to learn and help. Elaine stood on stage, holding Marcus's hand. "This is not about blaming," she said calmly. "This is about healing. About building a world where no child is made to feel small or afraid because of how they look." The audience clapped loudly. Hope filled the room like warm sunlight. Marcus's dream. Marcus had a simple dream. "I just want kids to be free to ride their bikes, laugh, and be happy," he told the crowd. That's all. His words touched every heart. Simple, pure, powerful. They decided to start small, hosting Unity Days in neighborhoods. On Unity Days, families of all backgrounds came together for food, games, music, and learning. People who had lived side by side for years, but never truly known each other, finally connected. Walls of fear slowly started to fall, growing bigger. Soon, other towns heard about the Marcus Foundation. Requests started pouring in. "Can you help us organize a Unity Day here? Can Marcus speak at our school? Can Elaine teach a workshop for parents and teachers?" Elaine and Marcus found themselves traveling across their state, sometimes even flying to other places. At every stop, Marcus shared his story. He spoke with honesty and bravery. He told people not to be afraid of what they didn't understand. He told kids not to lose hope, even when the world seemed unfair. People listened. People cried. And most importantly, people changed. Challenges along the way. But not everyone welcomed the change. In some towns, angry people protested their events. Some called them troublemakers. Elaine stayed calm. She taught Marcus that when people are scared, they sometimes show anger first. "We don't fight hate with hate," she reminded him. "We fight it with love, with patience, with truth." Marcus nodded, learning lessons far beyond his years. A proud moment. One day, Marcus was invited to speak at a huge event in the state capitol. Thousands of people gathered. TV cameras flashed. Elaine stood backstage, watching proudly as her son, once just a scared boy on a bike, walked confidently to the microphone. Marcus took a deep breath. "I'm not here because I'm special," he began. "I'm here because every kid deserves to feel special. I'm here because every community deserves to feel safe. For everyone. And I'm here because change doesn't start with anger. It starts with a simple hello to a neighbor you don't know yet." The crowd rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Tears streamed down Elaine's face. Marcus had found his voice, and he was using it to build a better world. A movement is born. From that day on, Marcus wasn't just a boy with a bike. He became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of injustice, love and courage can win. The Marcus Foundation grew stronger. More volunteers joined. More towns celebrated Unity Days. More kids learned that their voices mattered. And all of it started with a simple ride on a sunny afternoon. A boy, his bike, and a dream of being seen for who he truly was. Months passed, and the world around Marcus began to look different. The streets he once feared walking down alone now felt safer. The neighbors who once looked at him with doubt now smiled warmly and waved. But the biggest change was inside Marcus himself. He was no longer just the boy who had been stopped unfairly. He had become a young leader, brave, kind, and wise beyond his years. A surprise invitation. One afternoon, Elaine received a formal letter in the mail. It was from the governor's office. The governor, the highest leader in their state, wanted to meet Marcus. Not only that, but she wanted to honor him for his courage and his work in building unity. Elaine read the letter twice, just to be sure. She looked up at Marcus, who sat at the table doing homework. "Guess what, champ?" she said, smiling wide. "You've been invited to the state capitol." Marcus's eyes widened with shock. "Me? Really?" Elaine nodded. "They want to give you an award. They want everyone to know what you've done." For a moment, Marcus sat quietly, taking it all in. Then a big, proud smile spread across his face. The big day. The day of the ceremony arrived. Marcus wore a neat suit and tie. Elaine wore a bright dress, her eyes shining with pride. As they walked into the grand building, people turned to look. Not with suspicion this time, but with respect and admiration. The hall was filled with important people, leaders, teachers, reporters, and families. But when Marcus entered, it felt like everyone was there just for him. The governor stood at the podium, waiting. She smiled warmly at Marcus as he approached. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "today we honor a young man who showed us that even the smallest voice can create the biggest change." The audience clapped loudly. Marcus climbed the steps and stood beside the governor. She placed a shining medal around his neck. The medal read, "Courage, Unity, Hope." Marcus speaks again. The governor handed Marcus the microphone. He looked out at the crowd. He could see faces of all colors, all ages, all backgrounds. Marcus took a deep breath and spoke. "I never thought riding my bike would lead me here," he said, smiling. The crowd chuckled gently. "But when something wrong happened to me, I had two choices," he continued. "I could stay quiet, or I could speak up. I chose to speak up. And because of that, I learned something important. When we listen to each other, we can change the world." Tears filled many eyes in the crowd. Elaine pressed her hands to her heart, feeling it swell with pride. An unexpected guest. As Marcus stepped down from the stage, someone tapped him on the shoulder. It was Mrs. Peterson, the woman who had once called the police on him. She looked nervous but determined. "Marcus," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. I judged you without knowing you. I see now how wrong I was. Thank you for teaching me, for teaching all of us." Marcus looked at her kindly. He could have turned away. He could have stayed angry. But he didn't. He offered her a small smile. "It's never too late to do the right thing," he said simply. Mrs. Peterson nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. It was a moment of true forgiveness. A full circle. A new beginning. After the ceremony, reporters rushed to talk to Marcus. But Marcus didn't care about fame. He cared about the kids back home. He cared about making sure no one ever felt invisible again. The Marcus Foundation grew even stronger after that day. They built programs to teach kindness in schools. They organized community sports days and art festivals. They created scholarships for kids who wanted to make a difference. Marcus stayed the same humble, kind-hearted boy. He still rode his bike. He still laughed with his friends. He still dreamed big dreams. But now he knew he wasn't dreaming alone. He had a whole world standing with him. Closing thoughts. One evening, after a long day, Marcus sat with Elaine on their front porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky with gold and purple. "Mom," he said softly, "do you think the world is a better place now?" Elaine smiled, pulling him close. "It's better because you helped make it better, sweetheart," she said. "And it will keep getting better, as long as good people like you keep standing up for what's right." Marcus looked out at the street, at the kids riding bikes, the families walking dogs, the neighbors chatting. He smiled. Yes, the world was better. And it all started with one brave boy, a quiet act of courage, and a heart full of hope. Years passed. Marcus grew up, but he never forgot where he came from or what he stood for. The story of the little boy who was unfairly judged had now become part of many classrooms, books, and hearts across the country. His foundation had expanded to different cities, helping children everywhere. It became more than just a place for meetings. It became a symbol of hope, unity, and change. The new generation. At the foundation's main center, a new group of young volunteers gathered every Saturday. Kids from different backgrounds came together. Black, white, Asian, Latino. It didn't matter. They painted murals, cleaned parks, helped at food drives, and learned about kindness. Each child who walked through those doors carried Marcus's spirit with them, the spirit of believing in a better world. And Marcus was always there, smiling, guiding, and inspiring. He often sat with the kids during workshops. He listened to their fears, their dreams, their stories. "Never be afraid to speak your truth," he told them, "because your voice is powerful." A big celebration. One day, the foundation completed its 10th year. To celebrate, they decided to host a huge event in the very same neighborhood where everything had started. The streets were decorated with colorful banners. Food trucks lined the blocks. Music and laughter filled the air. Families that once lived in fear now celebrated together. Old neighbors hugged. Children played freely. Elderly couples danced slowly to the beat of joyful songs. Elaine watched it all with shining eyes. "Look how far we've come," she whispered. Marcus stood beside her, now a young man, tall, strong, and kind-hearted. "We did it together, Mom," he said. A special speech. As the sun began to set, a small stage was set up in the middle of the street. Marcus stepped onto it, holding a microphone. The crowd quieted down, eager to hear him speak. "10 years ago," he began, "I was just a boy riding my bike. I didn't know that one bad moment could lead to so much good." He paused, looking at the smiling faces in front of him. "Today, I don't just see a neighborhood, I see a family. A family that chose love over fear, kindness over judgment." The crowd clapped and cheered. "We are proof that change is possible," Marcus continued. "Not because we are perfect, but because we are willing to learn, to listen, and to love." Tears filled many eyes. It was a celebration of growth, healing, and hope. An unexpected honor. At the end of the night, the mayor walked onto the stage, holding a plaque. "Marcus," the mayor said, "your courage changed this community forever. Today, we renamed this street in your honor. Everyone gasped in surprise and joy. The mayor pulled back a cover to reveal a new street sign. Marcus Hope Lane. The crowd erupted in cheers. Elaine hugged her son tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Marcus smiled, feeling humbled. "This belongs to all of us," he said softly. Looking to the future, even after the event ended, Marcus didn't stop working. He dreamed of reaching more kids, more neighborhoods, more hearts. He partnered with schools to create leadership programs. He spoke at national events, inspiring thousands. He even wrote a simple book for young children, teaching them about kindness, courage, and community. Wherever he went, he carried the same message. Change starts small. It starts with one person, one voice, one brave act of kindness. And everywhere he went, people remembered him, not just as the boy on the bike, but as the man who turned pain into power. Final reflection. One quiet night, Marcus sat alone on the same porch where it all began. The stars twinkled above him. The cool breeze brushed his face. He thought about everything. The fear he once felt, the anger, the sadness. But he also thought about the love, the forgiveness, and the hope that had grown from it. "Thank you," he whispered into the night. To the world, to his mother, to the community, and even to the struggles that had shaped him. Because in the end, it wasn't about one event. It was about the choice to rise above it. It was about the choice to love. And that choice had changed everything.